Hello! In this video we're going to see how we can manage AI models in the Brutor AI governance platform. We will see how you can configure an AI model in the platform and then chat with it through the platform's core proxy. We're also going to see different ways you can actually talk to it. We're going to see how you can talk to it via our Brutor portal, then via external chat client like Goose, and via the API from the command line. Then we will see how we can view usage and proxy log and even audit logs to see what you change when you configure an AI model so you can be compliant. And so you can go back and see who did what, why is it working the way it's doing now, or why isn't it working. Before we do that, before we kick off, let's look at the architecture a bit to see what we are talking about. So there's this architecture picture on our website here, you can see. So what are we going to look at? So we're going to look at this so-called LLM proxy, AI model proxy basically. LLM stands for large language model. So it's going to be mostly the chat feature we're going to be looking at in this case. We're going to access from our user portal through the LLM proxy to an AI model. We're also going to see how you can use a Goose, for example, talk via LLM proxy to an AI model. And finally also command line calls with curl. How do you configure stuff in this platform? So the configuration is done by what we call the admin console, and it talks to a gateway control plane, and it writes the config into a database. What happens then is the gateway core is where the main thing happens. That's where all the proxies are located. So for example, LLM proxy, MCP proxy, agent-to-agent proxy, etc. It's all in here. And that's a super fast core proxy written in Rust. This control plane is in Python at the moment. The core proxy just reads the configuration that's been done from the admin console and the control plane. Now let's log in. So I have a local installation of the platform here, and I'm using the default tenant that you get when you install it. And I'm just going to use the admin, and then when you start, these are the default credentials. When we log in, we see that we have 8 AI models that's been enabled. So an AI model needs to be enabled in the system to be able to use it. But here is actually 0 of those 8 are actually healthy and can be used. And that means we are missing API keys, for example. Now, how are these AI models organized in the system? They're organized per provider, AI provider. So you're familiar with, for example, Anthropic and a lot of these, Google, Gemini, and of course, OpenAI. If you click on one of these, you will see all the AI models that the system has in its AI model catalog. There are about 300 plus models. Some of them are enabled here. They're enabled when you install. So the only thing you need to do with those guys is to give them an API key, and then you're ready to go. The most important thing is the cost column. So the system comes with cost estimates for each model. Those estimates have been put in there by scanning the internet, scanning the provider website, and estimate. So these are just estimates. You would have to check your bill and see what you're actually billed for different models. So for example, if I look at this one here, let's say I'm using OpenAI 04 Mini. Then I can go into cost and I can customize these here. What's the deal with costs here then, you might be asking? The cost is very important because that's how we track and budget the usage basically of the system. So this is the way we can see how much AI costs you, and we can do that per what we call resource group. So there is a default resource group when you start, and currently nothing is in here. There's no data because we haven't used it yet. But here you can see all the models are by default assigned to this resource group, and you have members here, the trial users is assigned. So by default I can log in as the trial user to the portal, the Brutor portal, and then use it and get access to these models. But health is unknown, so if I actually log in now to the portal. We can do that just to see. You can see that you can use different themes here, dark themes, so you can use that, sometimes nicer for your eyes. When you log in here, you see no AI models available. There are no healthy models, so I can't actually use anything. So I need to get going with that by going to configuration. Configuration will show you enabled models. I just need to provide an API key to actually be able to use them. And you can see that we support a number of different modes. So embedding is used. So here I'm installed using OpenAI's embedding 3 small. What is that used for? So embeddings are basically you send in a text, the model sends back numbers, and you can use that in caching systems, and we use it also for knowledge bases. You upload documents that are indexed in a vector database. Different ways those things are used. The OpenGPT image mini here, that's just a put here so you can get a feel for how image generation works. This one is the main chat I will be using a lot. And we also support responses models. They can give you structural responses in a different way than these chat completion. Then we have text to speech, so that's something in our portal. We use that one to have a voice read out the response from the model if you want to do that. Transcribe is basically if you want to talk and just speak the prompt, you can do that. I'll show you how that works. For anything here to actually work, you need to give it an API key. So there are no API keys shipped with the system because of that's cost and everything. So obviously you need to ship your own API key. So I am going to put in my own OpenAI API key. I'm using a local, so the API key here in this case is encrypted at rest in the Postgres database, and it's not going anywhere else. But if you're on the online trial trying this stuff out, you might want to create a project and do a project-based key with a cap of $5 or something. I go through that in getting started with the online trial. Now, I'm going to put my key in here for the embeddings model, and then you can see it's automatically assigned to the default group. So whoever's member there or using an API key from there will be able to use this model. So now you can see this is healthy. It hit the endpoint at the OpenAI provider, so you know this is definitely connected to that now. And then you need to do that for every single model. So here you can see this is a media model, so it has extra media information. Here's also cost estimates and supported sizes and stuff. You can obviously customize that. So this is not a chat. It doesn't have token-based cost, obviously. It's a media model API. Routing is you can actually put together routing groups and have, for example, if you want to be able to have more security, you could give a couple of chat models that it could round robin between, and then you can have fail over models that should kick in if none of the primary works, etc. This is interesting here. You can set retirement dates for models, because models do get retired. For example, just recently OpenAI's some image models got retired, and you don't want all the users to log into the system and one day everyone has problem because a model has just been retired and it's not available, so the whole company is at a standstill, specifically if this is a chat completion model that everybody's using. You can then set the retirement date and when was it announced, and you can set alerts, so the system will alert you as an operator admin, so you can make necessary changes to switch over to another model. So this is important. I now set the API key, and now you can see a different probe here, a catalog probe instead of an endpoint. Why is that? So you can see here a catalog probe will hit the provider's models and hit it with the API key and verify that that model exists. And also if they check the API key, you will see that that also works. This costs nothing, and we do that because if you actually hit an image model, the real endpoint, you will pay a lot, so you don't want to do that. We will continue with this one. That's one we're going to use the chat completion. So you want to put in your API, and you see also here there's a bit more. For chat completion, you have more stuff. Also connected to the default resource group and estimated cost. So this one is a bit more expensive. And you can set temperature and stuff here. And other tuning parameters. Tools. Parameter control is important. So it's been pre-configured to drop certain parameters that aren't supported. And this has been done for most of the models in the catalog. So you won't get warnings about that. And routing, if you have a routing group, you could assign this model to it. Now, system prompt, you can also set the system prompt. For example, if you want this model to always respond as a pirate, you could do that, for example. Or if a customer support, coding assistant, content writer. So you can just put in your, basically your system prompt here. We will see how we can customize a model with a system prompt in a bit. Now it's going to hit the endpoint probe for this one because it's just a regular chat. Now let's do the response model. This is also like a chat completion parameters available here. Now let's move on to these text to speech. You see that's not token stuff, so you have media here, how much it costs, and supported voices in the portal, I suppose, these audio formats, etc. And API, I need to put in the key here and then save that. And then finally we will also do speech to text here. So we will put that in here. You can see media and what's supported. You are pretty much set up. Endpoint probe hit for this here. Video is also supported. That in this case I'm using from another provider. So I need a different, here I need obviously a different API key. So I'm gonna grab a different API key here for file AI. I think it's called, yeah. So this probe is going to be synthetic. So it sends intentionally invalid request to Brutor on validation layer, rejects before and before upstream call. This is used as a fallback when the provider doesn't have a slash models. Also costs nothing. And we don't want to hit a video endpoint and then pay a lot of money just because we do a health check. Let's say if you leave this screen open, it's going to do health check. And you can configure that here, how it should do them. So if you will hit real endpoints for image and video and stuff, you will soon rack up quite a lot of money. That's pretty much configured. You might be saying, okay, I'm not going to use any model here. How do I get other models? That's easy. You can browse or search. For example, let's say I wanted to use Anthropic. Let's say I want to use that one, the latest, really good for coding and stuff. So I edit model. So now I'm in the same. First I need to tell the system, okay, you're going to add and enable this model. Who is going to use it? What resource group is going to have access? So I'm going to set default. I'm going through resource groups, or you could call it workspaces also, in another video, because it's a big subject. So now, again, I need a third API key here for Anthropic. So I'm going to get an Anthropic key here and put that in here. And that's pretty much it. I've assigned it so somebody can use it. I'm enabling it and putting an API key. So now it's going to hit and it's healthy. So now that one is also available. And if you go to the default here, you will see that you have now Anthropic available here, healthy. So all the healthy models should now show up in the portal here. If you go to and refresh, now you see you got loads and it's actually just picked Claude Opus. And what you can do now is just write something here and start chatting, but make sure you're using the right model that you had in mind. In this lecture we're not going to use any MCP to confuse. We're just going to do hello to the Opus. So what's happening now is that the portal sent this chat completion request to the core proxy, and then the core proxy called the the Anthropic Cloud Opus model. Now, if we go to usage here, you're going to see you have calls from, these are calls from checks, like the health checks. And you can see Opus has 2 calls because we did 1 health check and 1 call right now. You can see what that costs, that estimates. And here's the whole total estimate. You will see some MCP usage here now of system methods because I connected to 2 MCP servers, that's why. But I haven't used anything else. I have 1 unique user, the member, and that's the member I'm logged into the portal. Over here you can see the trial user, and you can see the trial user here, and I can see all the models. If we go back, so how do I use another model now then? You can just go to the portal, you switch to, for example, another chat model. We can do hello again. Now you can see it's going to D5.2. If you go back here and refresh, you will see that there are also 2 calls now for GPT-5.2. So that's pretty much how it works. And then, how do you know exactly what was going on in those calls? Proxy logs. So you take the last one, for example, trial user, GPT-5.2, and here is the exact log. You can get more details. You can go through here, see all the stuff. The exact model, this is going to be important. Because what if I want to use GPT-5.2 but with a different system prompt and be able to switch between them? How do I do that? So you can see all the information here. You can even export this and stuff. So that's that. Now, you can also see the Cloud Opus here. It's in the same place. Is there any audit when I change model configuration? Yes, you can see all those here. This is all the stack. You can see API keys, they're always redacted. You can see them in logs and stuff. That's in general for all. When you run with guardrails and stuff, it redacts before write the logs and things. So that's very important. You can export these in all kinds of ways. What if we want now to use external tools? This is all from the portal here now. So I can continue here and do, for example, image. So it just kicks off an image. Now we are switching into image generation mode. So we can see that works. Now we can see cost. It's going to start costing a bit if you use this. The same for, so you can switch even to video here. Running horse. Is that how you call it? Galloping horse. Right, so that's now finished. So you can see you can work with different models. Now, I mentioned this text to speech, speech to text. So if here you can see it's now voice input via that model that I configured. It will automatically configure that here. So I can just click that and say, what is the capital of France? I click again. So it now that's super useful. And now, obviously, I was in video generation, so you have to be careful with that. It's now generating a picture for, let's see what that's going to be. Actually, it did interesting how I can generate that nice picture. Cool. If you, maybe you didn't notice, but it supports, I'm going to start a new chat. It supports streaming, so if I switch now to Cloud Opus again. How do I become a good striker in football? You can see it's just going to immediately start streaming back. You see streams back. So streaming is by default, and the proxy supports that fully out. So you get immediate response, so you don't have to wait for. You can stop it down here also. You can click speech, and it's gonna a metallic voice, depending on what you have set up here in appearance, and then you can choose different voices here to speak back. You can also set the UI settings and stuff. That's that. So now, what about, as I mentioned, how do you actually talk to the gateway from something else than our custom portal that supports lots of stuff. Let's just say you want to use Goose chat client. How do you do that? Right, so I am in the Goose chat client project here now. So talks via the gateway by going here to settings, models, configure providers. So Brutor AI, you can say, is a provider also. I have set up a new provider here, and I've used it before, but at the moment you can see it goes to our cloud SaaS solution, so we need to change that. So what is the URL I need? How do I find that out? So you go back here, and then you're going to go back up to configuration. So that's where I have all our enable models with API keys and everything. So click proxy API access. Now you can see this is configured to go localhost 8100. What's that? That's basically. So now I'm going to go from Goose, and this gateway core here runs on 8100. This one runs on 5050, so don't make a mistake or try and go here. And then through the LLM proxy to the model. So this is what we're going to grab, and then we're going to go back to Goose, and then we're going to put that in here and see. So we got proxy now, and we should specify the whole endpoint, chat completion endpoint. Now API key. This is not the same as your provider key in this case now. This is where it gets really useful and interesting. So you create Brutor API keys now, and they can, so you can manage them per resource group, per group of people, per group of clients, chat clients, agents, assistants, anything that's going to access your AI models. You can kind of funnel it through these resource groups. Currently, there is no key that we can use here, just one for system health stuff. So I'm going to create the key. This key will be bound to this resource group, the default one, and it will have access to these models and any other AI resources we have. This is different from members. That's what I use to log into the portal, and it has access to the models. Now I'm going outside the portal, so I need an API key, not a gateway user. So I'm going to create a new key. I'm just going to call it API key Goose. And then I'm going to, you can tie it specifically to a particular gateway user, so it will be logged on that specific user. But now, and it's just going to get logged to the resource group default. Set an expiry date, create the key, copy it. This is what we're going to need now. Now, so this key is now kind of a middleman to your main provider key. So if it's getting misused in this group here now, if it's getting misused, you can just revoke it here now then, and then you're good. You can create another key and start over. So you can manage these keys completely specific, different from your provider main API key. This is really useful. So if something is exposed, or let's say somebody leaves the company and they just take keys with them, if it's the main provider key, you're going to have big problems. If it's this key, just revoke that one, create a new one and start over. And here also you're going to know exactly what groups use a specific model, because it's going to be logged on this group. So now I'm going to update that. I'm going to use GPT-5.2. That's one of the models I have access to via this resource group or workspace. Now that's configured. Now I can go to chat here. Let's say this is other things, extensions like MCP servers and stuff. Hello. That should now hit the proxy via Goose to the LLM proxy in Brutor Gateway, and then to the 5.2 model here. So now let's see how can we prove it did that now actually. So if we go to usage, you can see 5.2 have 4 calls now. And proxy logs. So we got 152 right here now. So request, and so you can like before, you can see the whole request response here. You can see it says default there. So if it's not tied down, associated with a user, it's going to put the group name there. So if the group said engineering, you would know, okay, engineering is now, they've used this stuff. And that's very good. So you can have setting budget. And so how do you set a budget? So you go to usage limits, LLM limits. So here you can now set like, okay, $3 per day, and then 35 per month. You can even set token limits per day. And then you get warnings if you step over those and stuff. So that's how you do the LLM side. You can have usage policies also. LLM policies. You can set, okay, what's the temperature max you can set. You can also set a lot of other stuff that you can have as a policy. You can, for example, lock down tools that are used for a specific model. Because tools, if you go via API, they don't necessarily have to be MCP tool calls. Any agent can just create the tool called definition structure and send it to the LLM. It doesn't have to be MCP at all. So you can then lock down stuff here and control what policies you have. You can have different things for the system prompt also. So that's how you manage the LLM models, policies and limits. You can also extend this with guardrails. So by default, you have guardrails enabled at all time. So you can see all the prompts, the input to the model is checked. And what do? We have checks, we have personal identifiable information. It's going to redact that. It's going to do some prompt injection checks, jailbreaks, toxic content, banned words. You can set regex patterns and stuff. You can even connect to external providers like EraGuard and stuff. But you have basic checks already by default configured in the system. What if you wanted to do command line call? So let's try that. Here I'm going to use the same principle as before. Remember not to use HTTPS when you're local. Host :8100 for the proxy, shut completions. Now this needs to be the key. So if you wanted to have, if you wanted different keys, so you had a chance to shut down that key if it gets misused by an agent or something, you could do agent key and then just put how when that expires, so you can have complete control of all that and then use that. And what we're going to do, we're going to send JSON GPT-5.2 say hi. So we just want the model to respond back saying hi. It did say hi. And we can see also usage and stuff. This is what we pick up, and then we know how many completion tokens and prompt tokens and stuff, total tokens. So that's how easy it is to use the API with the system. And now we should have another usage more on the 5.2, that's more coarse than a proxy logs. 5.2, say hi there. You can see here exactly it kind of fetched those things from the response. I mentioned that you can set system prompts and stuff and create different configurations. Let's say I wanted to do this one 5.2, but I wanted to do a pirate version with a different a system prompt. But I want to keep this standard one. How can I do that? You can then do copy. This is copying the model. You see here copy. I can then go in and do edit. Let's say we're gonna do this pirate edition. This is now our pirate model. Okay, so we go to system prompt, act like a pirate when you respond. That's now, it copied the key, the encrypted key also. So now I have the pirate edition here. If you go, you see it's gone to the default also. If you go to the portal, you go to AI models, you have the pirate edition, so you can try that now. Let's do a new try. Hello, how are you? Okay, it's doing that. Oh, it's even actually responding with some of the skills, and ahoy there made it's immediately done a use of that model. And I could switch back to the other model now if I wanted to, the standard here, and if I do a new chat with that model, it's going to do that skill because I have it. Now it's not responding as a pirate anymore. And you can do this from command line. So if you go back to command line, the question is, how do you do this here? That's very interesting because this is special for the gateway. Now you can actually specify model ID, so it picks up that system prompt. So you can do that, and here and what ID are you going to use then? You pick that from here, the pirate thing. You see that model ID there? Just pick that up. Oh, it's cached it now. Let's do another. You can see, I've been doing well today, mate, it says. So you can see you can actually narrow down exactly which version of a model you're using. Now, before we finish off, there is one more thing that can be interesting to know about. What if you say, okay, I've looked here, my models aren't here. I'm going to use some models that aren't in the catalog of models that have costs, settings and everything. There is two ways you can add new models that aren't available at all. You can just click add new model here. Start putting in all the data needed. You can see the red stars and those important ones that you need to fill in. Access control if you want somebody to be able to use it. Cost, you need that if you're gonna do some budgeting and limits and all that stuff. And then the key, of course. And if you see that auto discovery of the URL is clicked for most of the providers here now, because if you go to providers, Anthropic for example, you will see default API URL. So you might want to then actually, if the provider is not here either, you're going to have to start putting in a provider, default API URL, etc. And then you're going to select that provider here when you add your new model, etc. And then you can just save that and then you can use that model. However, there is another way that you can get a lot of config for free. This system is linked to Hugging Face inference platform. If you click here, you can search, for example, Quen. You can search here, and these are only models available with Hugging Face inference API. You can then select the models from their database of thousands of models. You probably have to know a little bit more what you are looking for. And then you just select add, and it pre-populates everything then. It just brings over from Hugging Face. However, Hugging Face does not publish per token pricing, so you're going to have to check Hugging Face billing dashboard and then try and figure out the cost later on, and you're going to have to fill in where should it go. And Hugging Face API key. I actually have a Hugging Face API key somewhere, yeah, so I can fill that in. And yeah, default API, everything should be kind of already set up there. And we'll see if that key works. Sometimes it doesn't work because they are linking there to other provider keys are needed to be set in Hugging Face platform. You can test the connection here if it works. So you can see the key I have works with this model here. And you can go, if it's a Hugging Face model, it has an extra. Yes, you can pop over to their interface, their user interface, and read more about the models actually. Now this one would be available in the, I go to AI models, I have the Hugging Face one here. If the model supported, it puts back how it thinks. You should probably see default. You can see, yeah, this one is here also. I made a bunch of calls there also. And the model, you can see that one here also now. Alright, that's managing models. So there's lots of stuff you can do to support different types of models and different modes of models in Brutor AI Gateway.